One of the most difficult skills, whether it be in the workplace or in your ordinary life, is saying no. In general, we don't like to say no. We feel that it will disappoint people. We feel that maybe it makes us a bad team player. And in this increasingly, I guess, 内卷的社会, fewer and fewer people are able to practice or fully implement the skill of saying no. But yet it's very important, because the ability to say no ensures that your tasks are prioritized on the ones that will have the highest impact on you, society, and the things that you care about. And it also prevents you from getting burned out. So how do we say no in a way that protects yourself but doesn't offend lots of other people and still preserves your position either within your family, with your friends, or in your organization? And that's what today's video is about. We'll generally discuss it in two main parts. The first is when to say no, and the second is how to say no. Dealing first with when to say no, I often like to look at it in terms of what I call 3 gateways. 3 tests that one has to satisfy in order for it to be a candidate for a no, a particular request. The first gateway I look at, and I actually use this in prioritizing my own tasks, or whether I should do any task whatsoever, is impact versus effort. It's a very simple 2x2 that you can draw, where on the y-axis there's impact, and on the x-axis there's effort. If we divide it like this, high effort, low impact, these are your prime candidates for no. Low effort, high impact are your prime candidates for yes. Low effort, low impact are kind of meh activities. You can do them perhaps if they're not too inconvenient. High impact, high effort, these tend to be time consuming activities that you have to think about carefully before accepting, particularly if your existing workload is heavy. When you've gone through the impact and effort curve and you've decided that the activity is sufficiently impactful with a sufficiently low amount of effort such that you can do it effectively in the course of your present circumstances, you move on to the second gateway. The second gateway is basically who is asking you. Who is asking you is obviously an important question, because even if you're at the wrong point in the impact effort curve, if the individual is someone who has your fate in their hands, it might be best to acquiesce to their request rather than upsetting them. For example, someone who may have a critical input in your ability to get promoted in future is obviously someone you're more likely to say yes to. Similarly, those individuals who you don't yet have a relationship with but wish to build it, well, it's better to get off on the right foot by acquiescing to a simple request early on rather than applying very rigorous standards to what you should say no to. And obviously the final lens is, what is your own workload like? And be realistic. And by this I mean, you may think that working 15 or 16 hours a day you're getting a lot done, but the science on this is extremely clear. The human brain cannot sustain mental workload for those lengths of time. All you're really doing is reducing your efficiency and reducing your quality of your work the longer you work. So if you really want to do a task well, you have to keep your days within a reasonable length. Otherwise the work that you're producing is simply not going to be of the correct quality. So by workload, I don't mean what you physically can do without collapsing. I mean, what can you do in a quality work day at a reasonable number of hours? So far so good. There are 3 simple tests about whether you should say no. Now let's suppose your colleague or someone has asked you to do something and it's failed those 3 gateways. In other words, you're minded to say no. Most of us know kind of what tasks we should be saying no to. The real skill in saying no is how to say it. That's where the tricky bit comes in. And let me give you some tips about how to say no, which is probably the most important part of this particular video. The second worst way of how to say no is, I'm sorry, I'm too busy, full stop. The worst way to say no is, that's not in my job description. Why are these 2 terrible ways of saying no? Well, they're not positive, they're abrupt, they give no reason that's empathetic in any way, or that matters in any way to the person who's asking you to do the request. And it generally shows a lack of willingness to be a team player and will reflect very badly on you. So having established that those 2 common answers are actually very, very bad answers indeed, how should you go about saying no? You should say no positively. Now that sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron or a contradiction in terms. How can you say no positively? Well, firstly, you can offer a solution. When I say no, I never say a flat no. I always offer some kind of solution or suggestion. The following I have found are particularly good ways of doing it. No, I can't do it right now, but if you come and get me at time X, I may be available. No, I don't have the time to do the task fully, but would a 1 hour or a half an hour or a 2 hour version suffice? No, I don't personally have the time, but I know XYZ in my team has looked at this problem before, and he or she may be able to help you. These are all examples essentially of at least providing something positive and constructive. When you say no, you should provide some kind of constructive solution. That way the individual who you're refusing understands that actually you are trying to help them. It just so happens that you cannot right at that moment. The second thing that you should do is give a real explanation. A genuine and honest explanation of why you can't help. So for example, if someone asks me to, do a piece of analysis and I'm currently writing an important update for a client, I'd usually say, I'm sorry, I can't get to that right now. I have a very important client update to work on, which is taking all of my time. However, it's handed in tomorrow and I may be able to help you then if that's okay. This is a constructive answer that gives an honest explanation, an empathetic explanation that the other party can understand, and therefore is much more likely to go down well than a flat, no, I'm too busy. Finally, watch your body language. I've noticed many times when people are refusing, they struggle to make eye contact. They fold their arms, they get very defensive, sometimes they turn away, they look at their phone. They do everything to avoid being in that situation. Unfortunately, in human discourse, those body languages are viewed as both negative and aggressive and are likely to make you actually look hostile when you're saying no. Again, counterintuitively, when you say no, you need to make eye contact, try and smile, use open body language, and appear more friendly than you would usually in order not to communicate a negative and hostile tone. A little bit of a contradiction in terms, but it will help you a great deal. So they're my 3 tips for saying no. Be positive and constructive when saying no. Offer the person a way out. Second, try and offer a genuine explanation and be empathetic. Third, use positive body language. My final tip is this: also be consistent. It may be the case that they don't take no for an answer the first time, but in that circumstance, you do have to be persistent. Otherwise, people will know. They just have to ask you the second or the third time for you to acquiesce. Be true to your word. When you say no the first time, you should mean it the second and the third time. Otherwise, your word has no credibility, and that's the worst place to be in of all.